Hello, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Unreal Engine tutorial on how to make a game like Breathedge. My name is Saragan, and in the last tutorial we worked hard, very hard on creating some a C++ storage system in the form of a storage component, which we managed. We have our item structs, item types. We updated our character to include that. So now, in this tutorial, we're going to do the UI for this. And we're going to keep this relatively simple because Breathedge interface is relatively simple. They have the UI, you left click to transfer an item. I think it's right click to drop an item. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. So let's begin. Right, so this is where we left off. We have our game, we have our floaty zone, floaty fly zone, and we obviously have oxygen, food, drink. We didn't really do anything with health, but if I hit something like tab or I, we have no inventory. So yeah, let's get started with that, shall we? So we want a new folder, and I'm gonna put this as inventory, because I want to separate the UI for this. And the first thing we're going to need is something that some people probably haven't used before. And this is going to be a drag drop operation. We want to be able to drag and drop our icons on our inventory, so we may as well set this up from the get-go. I'm just going to call this storage drop. And what this is going to do is just hold some additional information other than the default drag drop stuff that we can use. So first is going to be the widget, which is just going to be a widget reference. We're going to duplicate that and go for the source widget, and this is the where it came from, so where we've dragged it from. We are going to have a vector 2D, and this is going to be our drag offset. And lastly, we're going to have our item definition, which I believe is actually going to be 2 items. You want the second one that says F item here. The other one's a different kind of item. Probably should have named it something different when I was doing the inventory stuff, but sue me. And that's what we need to do in this one. This is now set up ready. So now we need to create our icon. And by icon, I mean it's a widget that contains a square that has the icon of your item. So if we come down to widget blueprint, we'll just go off user widget, and I'm just going to call this storage item. Bring this up here and zoom in like crazy. We're going to change to desired on screen, and we're going to add our canvas panel, a size box, which I'm going to name Dropbox. Basically, when you drop an item, you check where it is in the UI, you check where it's over, and it's just easier for me to have this naming convention. I also want to change the size to 90 by 90. Then we would like a border. Add that to your Dropbox. And this should be, unless it's really small. Oh no, it's just all the way over here. Just took me a while to find where it is on the UI. I zoomed in too much. So a vertical box on here. This is in case you want to add any additional stuff. I prep my UI to have as much configurability in case I want to change it down the line. So I also want a uniform grid panel. And then we're going to just have our image, which we are going to rename thumbnail. Thumbnail. There we are. So that needs to be filled, and this also needs to be filled. Now, the reason why I said we have all of these is the uniform grid panel. We may want a number for a stat count if we decide to implement stat counts in future. We also may want like a progress bar to say, you know, it's like a cooldown progress bar. It's a lot easier if you have it on a uniform grid. As for the vertical box, you might decide you want something on the bottom and have text underneath. I mean, it's entirely up to you. But we want to make sure that that is a variable. Dropbox is also a variable. And we can come over to our graph now. Get rid of tick. We're not going to use tick. Nobody uses tick. That's really bad. Bad practice is using tick. So we need a couple of custom functions. So update. Oh, no. Custom function. Thank you. Update item. And this is going to take an input of item. So what this is going to do is basically take in an item and then set up this storage thing to be, you know, what it needs to be. So we are actually going to promote this to a variable, aptly named item. Lovely. I'm also going to add this to a details group because I'm going to do a few more of these. Is empty. This is just for finer control and binding. I also want to duplicate this, and we want item row. We actually want the item row definition that this item is related to, because remember in our C++ we have this item which is just the name of the item, whether it's empty, and you know whether it's selected. It's bare minimal. The full definition of the item is on here. So we can take this and split our struct bin, and we are just going to check whether we are an empty item. If we're an empty item, we will do another function. I will just copy this down here, and we're just going to call unset texture, which we'll fill that in a moment. Unset texture up here. Now, basically, if it's an empty, we kind of want to display like an empty cell. We don't really want to display anything, so we want to grab our thumbnail and we want to set brush from texture. We are going to leave it blank. And then we are also set brush tint color, which we are just going to go with a dark green, because why not? Cool. So that's that. That is just setting empty texture. Update item. Right, let's continue from here. We have our base definition, but this could be completely different from what we had before. So get data table row, and we want to plug in that unique name here and select our items database. From here, we want to set our item row. Apologies if I'm going quick. We have an awful lot to get through. So I'm going to split that just so we can see things. And we need pretty much the same as this. So I'm just going to copy and paste that. But instead of that, we're going to use the thumbnail as our texture, just to zoom in a little bit here. And our tint color, we're just going to make super white, because we don't want it we don't want our texture tinted green. You might do. I mean, feel free to have all your items ever so slightly tinted green. That is entirely up to you. But what else have we got? A lot to get through. Right, so details. We're going to need another variable called index, and this is going to be an integer, and I'm just going to drag that into there. Should have control clicked, and I'm going to duplicate this and call it right button down, left button down. And I'm going to move these into a mouse category because they're not really details, they're part of the mouse. Right, I think that's all the variables we need. We now just have some functions to tie in. So let's start with our custom one. Can I please? Plus, thank you. And we're going to call this process process mouse choice. This is going to be like an interim function, just a helper function, just so we can say, you know, whether this button is down or this button is down when a button is clicked, because it's not obvious in the system. You actually have to use a function. Really, is mouse button down, and click on there and like left click. There we go. And then if we copy that and right click, put that in there, and we're going to drag the input onto here. So we are using the input. We'll be passing this input in momentarily. But this is just a way of saying, right, regardless of what mouse inputs we're dealing with, have we got the left mouse button down or the right mouse button down? You can do the same thing with things like keys, like shift keys and everything else. It's really useful. So if you're the function you'll see momentarily here, we can have a look now. You see on mouse button down, on mouse button up. It doesn't distinguish whether it is left click or right click. So this function is just to help us, and then we'll have some booleans to manage what we're doing. So while we're at it, why don't we add on mouse button down? First, I want to do a Boolean check to see whether we are empty. Because if we're empty, we don't really care if any of the mouse buttons are pressed. On false, it's not empty. We'll process the mouse choices just so we set them, and then detect drag if pressed. And this is going to be our left mouse button. Return value is just plugged into here, and this function is complete. We also need to override our on mouse button up because we've done this process on the down, we kind of want to do it on the way up to make sure that oh, forgot to tie in that. Did I forget to tie in that mouse event? Yes, I did. I want to make sure that it gets released correctly, so they're unset when they're things. This has to be what's called a handled. If you're erroring or something, you can fire off an unhandled, but generally you want to be returning handled where you can, otherwise they might cause some issues. What's going on there? Pointer event, drag, yep, plug that one in as well, forgot that. My apologies. Right, now, what else have we got? We have a long one to do, and this is on drag detected. Right, so this one's going to be a little bit of a long one, but hopefully you'll see where I'm going. We have item, and we're going to promote this to a local variable. I'm just going to call this current item. Now, the reason I am promoting this to a local variable is because we will soon be removing that item from the inventory. And as everything is sort of like reference and things, when you remove it from that inventory, this will probably be unset. At least I've had that in the past with other things. So I set it to a local variable, so regardless of whether I remove it or not, I can still work with it because it's basically copied the data from one to the other. It's not the cleanest thing to do, but it works and saves an awful lot of hassle. And because these current items, this item definition is really small, I mean, that's all it is. it's not really a problem. So we will do another empty check just to make sure. And if it is fault, we want false. Fault. If it's fault, yeah, you're at fault. No, I'm at fault. If it's false, we want to create a widget. And the reason we want to create a widget is we want to create a widget of storage item. So basically it's self. So when we have our item and we drag it, we want that silhouette of that item dragging with the mouse. So we just create the same icon. It saves a lot of time. And we can get owning player because this has to be defined. And I'm going to promote this to a... I think I'm actually going to promote this to a real variable. I can't remember. Oh. I call it dragged widget. Get rid of that. Oh. Right, I'm just going to do the set there. Right, there we go. Sometimes the engine can be a bit finicky. Right, so what have we got? Our current item. And we want to update item. So if you remember, on our storage widget, I can't speak today, on our storage widget, we had this function update item. We have just created a new item. I'm just going to close a few of these because we don't need those anymore. So we created a new one. So we need to update it with our existing setup, which, as I said, we needed to use the current item. Now, here's the actual drag part of it. So what we have is create drag and drop operation, and we can select our storage drop that we had here. Though I have made one mistake and I need to make this instant editable and expose on spawn. So please go do that, because otherwise that's going to make the whole thing pointless. Select none and then just select back and it will refresh itself. Or you could just, recreate it. It's entirely up to you. What have we got? We have our widget is going to be our dragged widget. Our source widget is going to be self because we're dragging from ourselves. Our item is going to be our current item. There we go. Payload we can leave blank. Drag visual, default drag. I want the dragged widget. We don't have to do this, but that's probably fine. There is an offset and there is a drag offset. The offset is ever so slightly different to what I have in my own. You probably don't need to add this if you don't want to, but it just means that when you're dragging, there is a you can have it running slightly further left, dragging slightly further right, and then obviously you got your pivots as well. You can do all sorts of things with these. So we are not done. No. So we need to get owning player pawn. There we are. And we want to cast to BP first person character. There we are. Plug that in. Nice and simple. We want to get our storage component, our brand new storage component, and then we want to remove BP item. And this we want to actually use our original item, not a current item. Oh, excuse me. And this drag operation plumbs in to the return node. So be sure to do that, otherwise no dragging will happen whatsoever. Compile, save. We've only got one more function in here to do, and that is on drop. Because it's a multi-purpose item, we need to handle on drop. So if someone drops If this storage item is an empty, and then you drag an item onto that empty, you want it to actually fill that empty. So you need to manage the actual drop event on here as well as the inventory. So below we have our Dropbox. No copyright. We want to get cached geometry. And then we want this pointer events. We want to get screen space position. And then have under here, it is under location. And then we can just have our absolute coordinates. And it just means when we're dropping, have we dropped on this particular UI widget, which as stated would have been our storage item or empty. We want to cast this to our storage drop because that is what we're using. If this is the only one you're using, you could probably convert to purecast. I use various drag and drop operations in my game, so I kind of make sure that the ones I'm using are specific. So what do we want? We want our. We haven't got it. No, we don't have it. Okay, we have another thing to add. Our actual inventory. This is the inventory that it is going to belong to. So we want our storage component. Object reference, marvelous. We're going to have this and we're going to add BP item at index. And we want the item from here, get item. This is the item we're going to be adding. This is the new item we've just dropped on. And in here we have our index. This is the index of the item that we are currently situated at, and then we just return and we return true. So that is everything I believe for this storage item. We can now actually work on the actual inventory. So let's just close both of these and move on. So we want our inventory. Let's have another widget, another user widget, and we're just going to call this inventory. Call it WB inventory or whatever you like. It doesn't really matter. But let's start here. We want a canvas panel and a border. We will want this to fill whatever. So click on the border. 1, 1, 0, 0. That's bright. It is absolutely burning my eyes. So let's get the brush color and bring this down. Cool. So what else? We need a vertical box, as we had with the other one. I'm going to add some text. And then I'm going to add a uniform grid panel, a size box to that uniform grid panel. Oh, no, I want to wrap that in a scroll box, just in case our inventory is too small. So the uniform one, we want it to fill out. The text block, I'm just going to give it a, I don't know, 20 padding, font. Let's crank that up to 32. Center it, and I'm just going to call this inventory. Marvelous. So this size box, I'm going to rename to inventory box because this is the box we're going to add all our new widgets to. So make sure that that is a variable. And then we're going to come into our event graph. We don't need tick. Again, tick's banned. I ban tick. You shouldn't really do anything on tick if you can avoid it. Really expensive. So get owning player pawn. And we're going to cast to BP first person character. I'm going to promote that to a variable. as I'm just going to call it character. Here I'm going to get component. Actually, I don't even need to do that. Just get storage component. If you don't know what the thing is, you can do get component by class, but I needed to promote that to a variable anyway. So let's do an is valid, just to make sure what we're bringing back is valid. Then we'll promote to a variable, which I'm just going to call inventory, because this is the actual inventory. Now we have something that we haven't done yet, so I will get to that. The get owning player, promote that to a variable, which I'm just going to call PC for player controller. I'll leave a gap ready for the other bit. And then I'm going to add a delay of about 0.1. The reason for this is for things like multiplayer and things. It's always worth, giving UI a little bit of a breather. Right, so custom event, and this is going to be called initialize. How am I spelling that? There we go. When you look at something and it's just not right. Right, so I need a branch, and I'm going to promote that to a variable for is updating. We only really want this updating when it's not already updating, so we don't really want to do it twice. So if it's false, true, and then I need another custom function just to fill this out. Inventory render. Going to call our inventory render here. And then we're just going to set our updating to false, because when this finishes, this is what it's going to do. So this is just the initialize. Yeah, I can spell it that time. Marvelous. And we want that called at the end of our delay. There we go. So it's going to come in, set some variables, set some more variables, delay, and then initialize. This is going to say, are we updating? Yes, no, and then we're going to start our actual filling of our items now. Something I found very recently, let me just take a sip of my drink because talking a lot. Something I found recently, if you spam updates for creation, the garbage collector doesn't pick up the widgets, and you can actually overflow the amount of, I think I ended up with like 15 million UI widgets by mistake. So, not a good thing. Inventory box has any children. We're going to do it the right way. And basically what we're going to do is if it doesn't have any children, we'll create them. If it does, we'll just update them. And we'll do the update first because that is probably going to be the easiest. We're going to grab our inventory. We're going to get items. No, stay. For each loop, and we're just going to loop over all the items. This inventory UI capacity should match the capacity that's in the actual inventory, so we can make that assumption. We want our inventory box get child at index. There we are. We want to cast to storage item. I'm going to convert this to a pure cast because I'm only ever adding storage items, so I can be damn sure that's all I'm doing. And then we will call update item, drag that, and then that just means that we're just updating the existing item. We're not worrying about recreating the entire inventory. We want to do the same loop for the false. So I'm just copying and pasting that. I will do... my phone just keeps going off and it's really irritating. Give me 1 second while I mute the hell out of this thing. Shut up. There we go. So we need our capacity. So I will do a capacity check here. Is this greater than our capacity? No. Right. So we want to create widget, and you get it and guessed it. It's going to be our storage item. That's one thing we haven't done. Come back to our storage item. This inventory component that we had, instant editable, exposed on spawn. Why am I always forgetting that? Let's just do none and storage. Did it not compile? Really? Oh, it didn't take exposed on spawn. Idiot. Oh, there we go. So fine. Inventory is going to be our inventory. And the owning player is going to be our PC that we saved earlier. We want to call update item. And we want to pass it that item from the for loop. And then we want to grab our inventory box here and add child. And then we want to just plug that into our new widget. There we are. Nice and simple. And this is just create or update. That's all that function is. Now, the thing that we haven't got in here is the thing that we're going to go and add. And this actually has to be in the C++ because it's something that I forgot to do. We had our update functions and things. That's fine. But these are only useful if you are subclassing the storage component. We need an actual generic update that we can bind to and listen in for updates. So if we declare dynamic multicast delegate f storage event, that's going to be in there. Copy that, paste it. This is going to be a U property, and it is going to be, if I can click on things, blueprint assignable. And we want our f storage event as the type, and we're just going to just call it update UI. Oh, because it's a variable, we don't need that. There we are. Marvelous. So in here, we got our inventory. We now should bind event to update UI. Click on that, and we're going to pass this to our initialize function. We have that event there, so that means anytime the inventory calls update UI, it will now call this event and update your UI. The only things left in the editor itself is to come to our blueprint character, and I think for the time being I'm just going to use a tab key just for proof of concept. We can move this into C++ later when we're sure what key we're going to use for our inventory. So that's fine. We also need in our UI HUD, we need to actually add our inventory. So let's add inventory. There we are. Add that to our thing so it actually generates it. We will anchor it to the center. I'm going to set the alignment to 0.5, 0.5. That's going to be 0 and 0. And we're going to set this to 1000, maybe 800. 600. There we go. We need a variable, and this is going to be inventory visible. And on our designer, we're going to come down to our visibility. We need to create a new binding. Copy and paste that for one here. Get our inventory visible, our branch. And then that just allows us to say when this is set to visible, set the actual thing to visible, otherwise set it to hidden. I'm going to, rename this, get inventory visibility. Who came up with a naming convention like that? So back on our character, we can now grab our HUD that we had. We want our get inventory visible. And we're going to set inventory visible. And we're going to set it to the not Boolean. So basically all this will mean is if it's true, we're going to set it to false. If it's false, we're going to set it to true. We're just going to have the tab key do that. It's probably not going to matter in this instance because we're going to make it UI only, but that's fine. So we need our player controller. Where's our begin play? Our begin play is down here. Let's come back here before our create widget. So we want to get owner. Cast to what do we call our player controller? Do we have a player controller at the moment? Is that the one we're using? BP first person player controller. Well, I'll be asked to BP first person player controller then. Long name. I never name mine that long. It just why. Promote to local variable. I'm just going to call it PC for player controller. Nice and short. Look how short that is compared to that. And as long as it's the same, we know all the time. So the reason we need that is if we come back to our tab key and our branch, we can now grab this and we can now set input mode UI only and set input mode game and UI, or just game. It depends on if you have UI that's interactable. The in focus is going to be our HUD get inventory. That is going to be our focus. And in addition, we also want to set show mouse cursor. Copy and paste that, and true if the inventory is shown, false if not. You can move this code to the player controller if you like, just to keep it clean, and then you just call player controller set UI mode. I don't really know. But that should, in theory, show our UI. Now, we have that. We have inventory. Fine. What else have we got? Well, we don't really have any items. So let's see if we added an item in the previous one. We did not. So let's add one. And we're just going to call this test row. Test row. I'm going to make this bigger and easier for you to see. Display name, test, row, description, this is a test, use action, testing, and we want logo. Let's put the logo just to make that simple. I'm not going to make it consumable or anything. We're not going to get into that right now. We come back to our character here. We're going to grab our storage component, add BP, add BP item. That's the one I was looking for. Split, put our name as test row. Index is going to be 0. We're just going to add it at item 0. Doesn't really make much difference. It's not empty. File, save, and play. We still don't have anything. Why don't we have anything? And this. Oh, is updating is defaulted to true. That's not right. That's probably why. There, right. So we have our one item, which is fine. I'm going to make the border more depressing. And just in case we haven't set it, capacity is 20. We should see 20 slots here. That's not right. Okay, well, we will investigate that in a moment. The one thing I do want to do is we created this update UI. And we're not going to be calling this anywhere. So, add empty, add index. Do you want to add it there? No, we shouldn't need to add it there. That's fine. Update. So on this return true, we needed to call update UI broadcast. And why it's a broadcast is because we can have many events assigned to this, and we want to add this in any place that has the add and remove here. If we're returning false, no point really updating it because things haven't done. Control Alt F11 to build. Cool. All right, let's see what we have. We have our drag and we have our drop. We haven't done the drop event for our inventory, and this is something that we will need to do because, as I said, if you drag on one, you just drag it onto the inventory by mistake, your item's going to disappear. And you really, 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 really don't want that. So for the most part, this is exactly the same. I'm just going to copy that and that, and that should do. Let's paste that in here. And we want it, is it on our inventory box? We need to tie our input to our pointer event, our operation into our cast. And on here, we have our inventory. We just want to add BP item because we don't have an index. We just dragged it into the empty space. And in theory, that should mean if I drag and drop there, it does nothing. Why does it do nothing? We have errors. Update item. Okay, so there are a couple of issues. Firstly, this I had as a size box. I didn't want a size box. I wanted this with a wrap box instead. So that's a mistake. That's probably going to cause endless errors. Where are they all? Let's just delete that and where is our thing? Make sure it is a variable. It's 1 and 2 can come into here. 3 can come into there. And 4 can come into here. One of the annoying things, it didn't replace the references. The other thing that we didn't do is on the update item, we're not setting the index with the item. So let's add that there. And then that just makes sure that the index that we have on this UI component actually matches the index that we've got in our thing. And in theory, we now have more items. So now we should be able to drag and drop. If I drag it over here, that should now drop to there. And we have our inventory. We can't close it because we set our inventory to UI only. We will fix that in the next session, which is from this. It just means that on the HUD or the inventory itself, we need something similar just to cancel out of it. But yes, guys, that is going to be it for this episode. We now sort of have a working inventory. We don't have any items. We don't have any drop stuff. So there's nothing on the floor to pick up yet, or floating in space to pick up. And we'll concentrate on that in the next one. We'll create a few more items, and we will create the floaty items that you have in Breathedge, and obviously we will have them fill up our inventory. It's not the prettiest of inventories. We'll make it look a lot better later on. We just need to get it functioning and making sure that this all works. But either way, thank you very much for joining, guys, and I really hope to see you next time. Bye for now. Bye-bye.